You don't want to overdiagnose yourself and start giving yourself all of this negative self-talk that your ADHD is bad. You've got to cure your ADHD. You got to spend all this money on supplements and treatments just to get over it. Because really, in the end, you want a little of it. You want that creative spark. You want those ideas to come in, but not overwhelm you. So this is why nootropics are great. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Holistic Nootropics YouTube channel, where we discuss using nootropics, nutrition, and biohacking to help you hack the power of your brain. My name's Eric, the Holistic A-Hole, and in this video, I'm talking all about the best nootropics for ADHD. Now, before we talk about the actual nootropics that are great for ADHD, and there's plenty, I want to talk a little bit about what ADHD is and why you would want to use nootropics and biohacking techniques for it in the first place. With ADHD, what you want to do is you want to control your brain. You want to really harness your brain because your brain becomes like a wild horse. It becomes this uncontrollable thing that it's just running in all these different directions. And the natural tendency to get distracted is always going to be there. There's nothing we can do about that in this modern society. Unless you're a monk living on a mountain and you meditate 3 times a day for an hour each time, and you have a float tank and you're able to really drop into just intense focus, you're not going to be able to naturally have that in today's world, especially if you're a go-getter, especially if time is short. So this is why nootropics are so important. This is why really focusing on focus is so important. You're also going to benefit from getting processed preservatives and ingredients out of your diet. You're going to benefit from getting things like high fructose corn syrup and canola and vegetable oils out of your diet. Also, high glycemic foods, starchy carbohydrates, these sorts of things can really tear down your brain and give you more of an ADHD response. At the end of the day, ADHD is really a matter of dopamine. Do you have enough dopamine and norepinephrine to be able to hold your attention on the task that you're trying to complete? Many of the most popular drugs or amphetamines that are used to treat ADHD are really designed as dopamine boosters. This is why they're so popular, and this is also why they can be so detrimental. The brain is so complex, and when you start manipulating neurotransmitters like dopamine, like serotonin, like norepinephrine, like epinephrine, like acetylcholine, like GABA, you start to manipulate the entire balance and homeostasis of your brain. If you've ever seen my interview with Dr. Kurt Wohler, we talk about how the brain and neurotransmitters are really a Venn diagram. Each one kind of crosses over the other, and each one really depends on the other. When you just boost one neurotransmitter, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to solve the problem that you're after. In fact, you might create a whole new set of problems that you weren't prepared for. This is why so many drugs like ADHD drugs or antidepressants or anxiolytic drugs can have such detrimental effects, and it's so bio-individual. There's so many different pieces that go into how your neurotransmitters function in the first place. Anything from genetics, diet, lifestyle, to environmental toxin exposure, to relationships, to metabolism. All of these things play such a crucial role in how your neurotransmitters function in the first place. So when you try to start using a pharmaceutical agent to raise your neurotransmitters like dopamine, it will have an effect. You will 100% feel an effect. But for some people, that effect can be great, or for some people, that can make the problem worse. And this is why using nootropics are so useful when trying to treat ADHD, because they won't have the pharmacological effect that these pharmaceutical drugs have, but they will give you a noticeable difference depending on how potent the nootropic is, how well quality the manufacturing is, and what mix of nootropics you use. And then, of course, if you watch this channel, you know that it's not just the nootropics, it's the nutrition, it's the genetics, and it's really caring for these other elements that will help give you a full holistic healing of ADHD. With ADHD, that's not to say that you just want to heal it. There's certain parts of ADHD that you just gotta have. Sure, for certain tasks, you need to have that laser focus. You need to have that tunnel vision. But then a creative mind, a natural creative mind, has to be free to explore, has to be free to look around and invite all of these different influences in because, look, you might make the wrong decision and you might go full speed ahead in that wrong decision. And if you can't have the foresight to listen to new influences come in, then you might just bury yourself into a really bad place. A little ADHD is totally normal. You don't want to overdiagnose yourself and start giving yourself all of this negative self-talk that your ADHD is bad. You've got to cure your ADHD. You got to spend all this money on supplements and treatments just to get over it. Because really, in the end, you want a little of it. You want that creative spark. You want those ideas to come in, but not overwhelm you. So this is why nootropics are great. The nootropics that I prefer might be different than other nootropics people prefer because I like to stay a little bit more on the natural side and away from the pharmacological side. There are certainly smart drugs that will give you that pharmacological response. I just don't prefer those, and I don't recommend those for people who I work with. But that's not to say that they're not going to be beneficial. So the first nootropic that I want to talk about is a Drafenel. A Drafenel is the prodrug of modafinil, which means that when you take a Drafenel, it essentially metabolizes the same way as modafinil does in your body. Whereas if you take modafinil, modafinil is designed to juice up your brain energy, it's designed to stimulate you, it's designed to jack up your dopamine, it's designed to give you the benefits that you want to overcome ADHD. It's just that it's going to give you a very potent pharmacological response, and a lot of people don't do well with using something that strong, especially if you start using it later in the day and sleep becomes an issue. So something like a Drafenel, which has very similar effects to modafinil because it is the prodrug, it is metabolized similarly to modafinil, might be a little bit less of a potent response. But like modafinil, you really have to monitor how a Drafenel works for you because everybody's different. So while a Drafenel can be very potent, it might not do anything for you. And there's certainly stories of people all over the internet who have had less than stellar responses to a Drafenel. But if you're looking for something that's very modafinil-like, a Drafenel will be your best bet. And a Drafenel is found easily over the counter. It's sold through most nootropic companies. A Drafenel is going to boost those beta waves that are associated with memory and focus. It's going to stimulate your mind. It's going to give you energy boosts. And it's been shown to help with people in cases of ADHD. It's also been shown to be useful with cognitive decline. The next nootropic I want to talk about is L-tyrosine or NAcetylLTyrosine, NALT. A lot of people like to use tyrosine for something like ADHD because, again, when we're talking about ADHD, we're talking about dopamine. We're talking about how do we raise dopamine because dopamine or lack of dopamine is the reason why it's so easy to get distracted. Tyrosine is the precursor to dopamine. It's going to help raise dopamine. It's going to help your attention. It's going to help your mental energy. N-acetyl-L-tyrosine also has a lot of anti-stress benefits. Now, N-acetyl-L-tyrosine, as compared to regular tyrosine or L-tyrosine, is actually more bioavailable in your brain, which means it's able to more readily cross the blood-brain barrier. So if you're looking for a tyrosine supplement, N-acetyl-L-tyrosine will be the one you want to get. The only issue I have with tyrosine is that it's very bio-individual. For some people, N-acetyl-L-tyrosine or L-tyrosine can be a godsend. It could be great. It could give you the effects that you're looking for. But for some people, it can be an absolute curse. Some people just don't do well with tyrosine. And the reason is because the dopamine beta hydroxylase enzyme in your brain that converts the dopamine to norepinephrine, this is where you actually get those dopamine boosts from. Some people might have a slow enzyme that doesn't exactly make that conversion well enough to get the benefits from L-tyrosine. And the problem is that if you can't convert dopamine to norepinephrine, then you start running into a problem of having excessive dopamine, and that can create a whole suite of problems like anxiety, more depression. For some people, it can be schizophrenia, and then over the long term, dopamine toxicity can lead to Parkinson's disease. So you really have to know what is your ability to convert dopamine to norepinephrine. The way this enzyme loses its potency is by genetics, or it can be through a gut infection like Clostridium difficile. certain bacterial infections of your gut can essentially hijack the dopamine conversion and turn it into a toxic element. So if you are going to supplement with L-tyrosine, you have to really closely monitor your day-to-day results. Are you feeling better or are you feeling worse? Is it actually helping your ADHD? Or is it making you more anxious? And in clinical studies, this is what they've seen. They've seen that L-tyrosine has certainly helped some people with ADHD, and they've seen that it's made the problem worse. Let's talk about choline. A choline supplement can certainly help your ability to focus because choline is just an all-around great substance to have more of in your brain. It depends on what choline are you going to take. Choline is going to help boost the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, which is associated with transmission, cell-to-cell communication. So when your brain is able to fire on all cylinders, when your brain is being more efficient with its energy, then you're able to focus better. Now, not all forms of choline are created equal. You can certainly get choline through food, mostly animal food, so egg yolks are probably the most common, but you can also get it through things like red meat, chicken, fish, organ meats. That's typically the way that I like to get choline, but you can certainly get it through a supplement like phosphatidylcholine, even though phosphatidylcholine is more directed at your liver metabolism. But your two best versions of choline for the brain are going to be either alpha GPC or CDP choline. And to take it one step further, you could even stack it with something like huperzine A, because huperzine A is an acetylcholinesterase inhibitor. Acetylcholinesterase is the enzyme that depletes your choline. It metabolizes it. So if you can inhibit that enzyme, you'll have more choline in your brain for longer. But like anything else, you got to be careful. You have to really monitor it because you don't want to run into a problem of choline toxicity, which isn't as common as dopamine toxicity. And choline is a potent stimulator of dopamine. So choline can give you that boost of dopamine that you need to help stabilize your ADHD. Now, the more natural nootropics that I personally like, something like L-theanine. L-theanine is a more calming amino acid. You can find L-theanine naturally in green tea, but if you don't want to just be sucking down green teas, you could take an L-theanine supplement. L-theanine helps stimulate alpha brainwaves, which are great for getting in the zone, for flow, for real deep focus. It's also an NMDA receptor antagonist, which means it antagonizes the release of glutamate, glutamate being the excitatory neurotransmitter, and excessive amounts of glutamate can certainly contribute to something like ADHD because it makes you very unstable. It makes you very excited. It makes your brain always kind of looking for something else. If you can antagonize that output through something like L-theanine, then you can certainly boost your ability to focus more, along with the fact that L-theanine can help boost all the beneficial neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, and GABA. Finally, my last more natural nootropic is going to be magnesium. While magnesium might not be considered a traditional nootropic, it's certainly an essential mineral. In fact, most people are severely depleted in magnesium, which is bad because magnesium is used in over 300 metabolic processes in your body and your brain. Some people have even estimated that magnesium's involved in several thousand metabolic processes in your body. It's a very important cofactor. It calms your HPA axis, your hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. This is where all of your stress hormones go. So if stress is the foundation of your ADHD, magnesium is certainly an important mineral to have in your stack. Magnesium, like L-theanine, also antagonizes glutamate, so it has an all-around calming effect. I know when I take magnesium, I feel the calm, I feel the chill. That's what magnesium does. It's important to note, though, that magnesium has a lot of different forms, so it's very important to understand the differences between the forms. Luckily, I've written an entire guide in understanding the different forms of magnesium that you can choose from. You can check that out at the link in the description below. Now, finally, if you're like me and you don't like taking a lot of different pills, or some of this can feel a little overwhelming, maybe you're more of a nootropic newbie, I recommend the pre-formulated stack MindLab Pro. MindLab Pro has 11 different nutrients in it, including 8 different nootropics and 3 B vitamins. So you're going to get L-theanine, you're going to get choline, you're going to get rhodiola rosea, you're going to get tyrosine, you're going to get phosphatidylserine, you're going to get bacopa monnieri. You're going to get a lot of these very stimulating yet calming nootropics that can help really with any case of ADHD because that's what this stack is designed for. It's designed to increase focus. It's designed to increase memory. It's designed to increase your brain's processing speed. But it doesn't include caffeine, so you're not going to get an overwhelming buzz from it. But I'd love to know what you think. Have you tried any of the nootropics or supplements that we talked about in this video? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you're new to nootropics and you're looking to get started, make sure you go on over to holisticnootropics.com, where we have entire guides on different ways to get started with nootropics, biohacking, and nutrition to hack the power of your brain. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I'll catch you on the next video.